So this book, called the Book of Answers, the church that's on the cover is Walton Memorial United Church in Bronte Village in Oakville. It's a real church. I was, at the time I was began writing this, I was living and working in the same neighborhood as this church, but this wasn't my church. I made a decision early on, if I'm going to write about killing people in a church, it probably shouldn't be the one I'm working at. So I went to visit my friend Jim Gill, who's been the pastor at this church for 30-something years. And I said, Jim, can I borrow your church to kill people in? And he said, let me get you a list. He was enthusiastic about the project, and he gave me a bound history of the church, and he took me on an insider's tour of the building. And there are places and situations mentioned in this book that I learned about because of his exclusive tour. Things that most people didn't know about the building, which was kind of cool. So then, when the book came out last summer, for the month of August, Jim and I worked out a deal where half the proceeds from all the sales went back to that church. So every week, Sunday morning during the announcements, he held the book up and said, you need to buy this book. It was a lovely way to promote it, and that's been helpful to me, because as a pastor, it's really, really hard to ask for money. It's really, really hard to sell stuff. It's really, really hard to sit at a table and say, please buy my book. So to be invited to share about the book and read to you from it is a wonderful privilege. But I don't want you to feel like you have to buy it. You can get it. You can get it at the library. The Essex County system has it. I think you can borrow it online from the Windsor Public Library. And if you go and ask for it, the more people that ask for it, the more likely they are to have it in the library, and the more likely other people will get to see it. Because not everybody is as fortunate as we are. Not everybody can afford to buy a book. But if you can afford to buy one, I'll sell you one. And I would encourage you, after you read it, to pass it on to somebody else. Because that's what you do with a book you like, right? Yeah. So, the problem with reading from a mystery novel is all the good bits are further in. But if I read the really good bits, I could ruin the story. Or I could spend half an hour explaining to you the 10 minutes I'm going to read. And that would be really boring. And preachers know not to be so boring. Well, you can tell me later. So I'm going to read you the first chapter. Zeke, the cadaver dog, raised his big head as if he'd just thought of a question. He paused his zigzag search pattern to turn and face me and his handler. His loud bark sent a shock through me, even though I'd watched him open his jaws to let loose with it. The producers of The Ghost Toucher claimed they were testing a theory that dogs like Zeke are guided by the spirits of the dead. Zeke and his handler were brought in to sniff out the ghost of St. Mungo's church. I thought it was a ploy to jazz up an otherwise boring location shoot. My assignment was to be the generic minister type in a dark suit and clerical collar who'd say to the camera, I've heard the wild rumors, of course, but haven't seen anything like what you're looking for. And that's the line I'd stick with if asked. I sure wouldn't tell them what I'd seen just before the dog barked. Annika, the handler, said, Good dog, Zeke. You're such a good dog. She knelt to unclip Zeke's black nylon leash from his safety orange search and rescue harness. Bones, Zeke. Find Bones. Annika tucked the leash in the pocket of her khaki tactical vest as she rose to stand. She said, That bark was his first tell, Reverend Tom. He may have something. The sable-coated German shepherd bounded up the aisle, towards the front of the St. Mungo sanctuary, leaving paw prints pressed deep into the crimson carpet. He cleared the 3 steps up to the chancel platform in a powerful leap, landed under the dark oak communion table, and skidded between his legs. Zeke's nails clicked and scratched at the polished wood flooring as he scrambled for footing. I turned to face the dog handler, who had all of my 6 feet of height and a bit more in her tactical boots. I met her eyes, which were amber. Annika, is he really searching for bones? That's just his go word. Zeke's trained to find bones, blood, and partial or complete human remains. Those last words chilled me, despite Annika's bright smile and the withering heat. The production crew had set up a bank of huge carbon arc spots. They shone down from the rear balcony, lighting the church up like a high-end car dealership and roasting us like convenience store hot dogs. All the sanctuary windows are stained glass. You'd never know that outside it was a cold and gray morning, a late winter blizzard that left folks from Arkansas to Quebec. Plowing and digging had also blasted Oakville. I'd felt lucky to get from my car to the church's side door without tumbling on the slick ice. Zeke regained his traction on the hardwood floor and dashed towards an oak door set in the wall beside the organ keyboard. He nosed it open and stood peering down the back stairs. His body vibrating, Zeke turned back towards Annika and opened his jaws for another harsh bark, which echoed through the sanctuary. That's his second tell, Annika explained. He wants to get down to the basement. Annika's long blonde hair lifted as she ran to her dog. Her thick-soled boots thudded on the hardwood floor. A holstered phone and a long black flashlight bounced against her hip. Reaching the doorway, she squatted near Zeke and dug into her vest pocket for a treat. The German Shepherd licked it from her open palm. Good dog, Zeke. Bones? Zeke took his cue and dove down the back stairs. Annika was right behind him. I headed towards the chancel steps, halting when I heard, "You need to let us through, Reverend Tom." I pivoted in time to avoid Kat Daniels, the assistant director, waving her aluminum clipboard as if she was swatting flies and me out of her path. Hassan, the camera operator, was close at Kat's fashionable heels. His muscled frame made the video rig strapped to his shoulder look small. As he sidestepped to pass us, I backed out of his way until I felt the hard edge of a pew against my rear end. Kat ran after the camera operator shouting orders. Go, go, we need this shot. Get downstairs and see what the dogs found. That's chapter 1. So secrets of fledgling mystery writers. First secret, you learn, make the first chapter really good. Or as good as you can make it. So I probably rewrote those 3 pages more than anything else. And I probably rewrote the first 5 lines more than the first 3 pages. And I probably rewrote the first line more than anything else in the whole book. Because you know, right? You're in a bookstore and you're going, what the heck is this? What's this all about? And if you can get past the first couple paragraphs, you probably bought the book. So that's what I tried. But then I thought, I really want people to keep reading. So I tried to write it so that at the end of every chapter, there was something that made you want to go further. And that's a good thing, I guess. But I've also had some of my clergy friends who read the book said, you owe me a sermon, because I started reading this and I didn't finish my work. But there are actually a couple sermons in the book, not heavy duty, but they're in there because I thought if I'm writing in the life of a minister, there has to be a churchiness to it, and you have to kind of see what does a minister do, and we know once in a while we preach. So I did put a couple sermons in there. I put a cleansing of the temple sermon in there that was really fun, And I put a funeral sermon in there. Because preachers don't stop being preachers. We don't stop having something to say, even though a mystery novel is a different genre, a different mode. Sometimes people ask why. Well, I'm going to tell you a story I've never told anybody else. So when Lexi got the job here, and I was hunting around to get a job, and I got a part-time position following Del Stewart, and it was at Chalmers, and got that. It was a lovely congregation, I loved being there, but I was still kind of looking around for a full-time position. So I was interviewed at another United Church congregation within 50, 60 miles of here. And one of the interview questions was, so what do you do for fun? And I thought it's probably a trick question, asking the minister what they do for fun. But I said, well, I like to read mystery novels. And they looked at me like I was speaking Martian. And it was like, well, their idea seemed to be that all I should want to do would be to read church books or books of sermons, books of theology, all that kind of stuff. And that's all fine, but you also got to have another life, right? And one of the benefits of being a minister, 35 years of snooping in other people's houses. You need to know this, right? Like if you invite the pastor over, they're looking. And they see what's in your house. They see how you live. And I don't mean that in a judgy way, but it's lovely to see how people actually live. And in 35 years of visiting people's houses, I've rarely found a book of sermons or a book of theology. But I'll tell you, I found lots of murder mysteries, lots of thrillers, lots of romances, lots of historical fiction, lots of science fiction, all stuff I kind of like. So when I decided I wanted to try writing a book, I thought, I'm not going to write theology because no one's ever going to read it. But I can use what I love. I love detective stories. I love mystery. I love thrillers. I can write in that genre and say some of the stuff I want to say. I'm not going to tell you the name of the church that asked me what I did for fun, because that wouldn't be fair. I'll leave that one mysterious.